Are you a business owner or an aspiring business owner and want to learn how you can get your state and federal tax ID numbers? Well, this workshop is for you. Our good friend Luis from Pacific Western Bank is going to give us an overview on this topic and answer some questions that are commonly asked by business owners regarding how to get your state and federal tax ID. You're going to learn so much, and before we get to this workshop, please be sure to share this with your friends and family. That way they can be empowered with this information, because knowledge is power.
Hi, my name is Luis Ortiz. I'm the branch manager for Pacific Western Bank, housed here in the city of Rosemead, California. Been a branch manager for 8 years and been in banking for over 25 years. Today's topic, we're going to be talking a little bit about federal and tax IDs and how to request them for all several types of businesses. Let's go ahead and start off by talking a little bit about what a federal tax ID number is. And right after that, we're going to be talking about state tax ID numbers. So right now, the federal tax ID number is pretty much what identifies your business. And most people do ask what the purpose of it is. Well, it actually, as I said, it does identify the business that you are creating. So this helps you in paying taxes when you go ahead and hire employees, opening a bank account, and of course to go ahead and get your business license and permits. So this one is a mandatory identification number for your business. It is issued by the federal government. So all businesses do need to have a federal tax ID number. Unlike a state tax ID number, that one is governed and issued at the state and local level. So depending on the type of business that you have, it actually is mandatory or it is not. So, for example, the need for a state ID number obviously ties directly to whether your business must be paying state taxes. Sometimes you can use state ID numbers for other functions as well. For example, the protection of identity theft. Tax obligations also differ from state and local levels, as I mentioned. So to know whether you need a state tax ID number, my recommendation would be to research and understand your state laws, and also to find out what type of business you are creating, which we'll get into more details on that later. But to my reference earlier, each state obviously has different tax laws and regulations. For example, here in the state of California, if you are applying for a state tax ID number, it actually there's $100. Actually, my apologize. If your business is operating in California and it's paying more than $100 of wages to employees per quarter, then yes, you must obtain a tax ID number. How that works is you must actually also make sure that you do get a federal tax ID number before you apply for a tax ID number. And once you have your federal tax ID number, then you would have to go into the state website and actually enroll for that. It's a pretty easy process. This usually takes at least 24 hours for the state to go ahead and issue you that tax ID number. Upon receiving that, then that's when you go ahead and are more than welcome to open some sort of a bank account to establish the identity for that business.
Okay. Sounds really good. I think that's a good breakdown. Initially, the importance of the federal and state tax ID. you kind of give it a whole overview of the why you need it and everything. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we get to the questions, to break down or?
No, we actually could go ahead and go to the
Okay,
questions.
cool,
That's
cool.
fine.
So we have some questions that have been submitted previously in the past from business owners that we serve. And I want to start off. I know you might have answered this already, but this is something people have asked. Does every business need to get both a federal and state tax ID, and why?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, the federal tax ID number does actually is mandatory. And once again, unfortunately, we all have to pay taxes, and especially at the federal level. So that does include businesses as well. So the the easiest way to go ahead and explain the reason is because a business is also its own entity. Us as people obviously have our own social security number that actually we use to report our taxes. Each business also needs its own entity, and this is why the federal tax ID number is mandatory for all business at the federal level. Once again, when it comes to the state level, it depends on the type of business, depends on the state tax rules and regulations to where you might not be able to use it. But once again, the best tool is for you to go ahead and use the state website to go ahead and see if your business is um, is required to get a state tax ID number.
Okay, so like you said, we all have to pay taxes. I think one thing we'll never escape is death and taxes.
That is
Those are the
very
two
true.
things. Yeah.
Exactly. Those two are not, there's no way of getting rid of them. Exactly.
Even after your death, actually, if you give some property to your kids and you didn't put it under what, like a living trust, and they'll tax them.
Yes, Uncle Sam will still try to get you out of your grave to go ahead and pay up. Absolutely.
So yeah, taxes are always going to be there. And from what your answer, from what I see is, so like just like people, we have a social security, something to identify us for our taxes and all that. A business needs something similar, and that's where the federal tax ID comes in, right? To identify and all that.
That is correct. And once again, it actually depends on the type of business, the type of how much expense. It's actually one of those things that there's different type of businesses. Just to give you a little information on that, it could be from the smallest type of business as a sole proprietor, meaning that it's only owned by one individual, or as big as a actual full-on corporation. So depending on the level and depending on the type of business, then yes, you will need some sort of either or you would only need the federal tax ID number.
Okay, awesome. That's really really good to know. Now, another question that we have here is how long does it take to get a federal and state tax ID? Is there a certain number or it just varies between business, or what would you say?
The federal tax ID number is issued immediately, actually, upon applying. And the good thing about that is that federal tax ID number is free. So upon applying, you will be receiving that tax ID number. Now, the state one might take up to 24 hours or a little bit longer. But once again, you do need the federal tax. Upon that, depending on the business, then you could go ahead and file for the state one. But typically, the federal one is issued immediately. The state one does usually take like 24 hours.
Okay, okay, that's really really good to know. Now, if a business owner is hearing all this and they're like, okay, what documents do you usually need to file to get your federal and state tax ID? Is there some general documents that you would need, or?
Yes, actually, once again, depending on the type of business, the simplest thing could be from a sole proprietorship or to the corporation. But depending on type of business, yes, you do need a few requirements, which could be from business license to statement of information that are issued from the state, or for a corporation, what's called articles of incorporation. So yes, there are some. My also recommendation is if there's uncertainty or any doubt of what documents need to be presented, each state, of course, has the Secretary of State website, which comes in very handy, and you could definitely go ahead and research there, and it gives you a pretty good breakdown of what documents are required for that.
Okay, okay, and you said to get the federal tax ID, it's free, right? That's what you said.
It is same thing as your social security number. It
Okay.
is something that's given by you by the federal government, which is free, and the same thing goes to businesses. So those are free. Um, Once again, at the state level, it might vary from price, but here in California, like I said, it actually depends on the type of business. If your business does pay any type of wages of $100 or more, there might be a fee. So depending on the business. So once again, my best recommendation is to refer you to this Secretary of State website to see what type of fees or other um, regulations are pretty much required for that.
Okay. Okay. And if someone's watching and they're curious to know, they probably just started a business. They want to get all this settled down, the federal and state tax ID. Is there a specific place to apply for your federal ID? Is it online? Is it in person? Can you go to a bank and apply, or where's the best way? Would you recommend to do?
Yes, that's a good question. We have had customers coming into the bank level and do ask for that, and unfortunately, yeah, the banks really don't have access to that. So, for you to go ahead and apply for a federal tax ID number, yes, you do have to go to the federal website and go ahead and apply there. Once again, at the state level, you would have to go to the Secretary of State website and go ahead and apply there. Very easy. Like I said, the tax ID number is issued immediately at the federal, and once again, the state might take a little bit longer.
Okay. Okay. So I guess it just varies. It varies, and every state is different. I'm assuming California is going to be different from Texas, their process from Colorado, and etc.
Exactly. And also, another great tool is to go ahead and perhaps contact your tax person. They are the experts also in actually trying to um, uh, register businesses with those tax ID numbers. So that is another tool that you could definitely use.
Have you seen any fraud with this where people might pay a specific person and they do it like, is there fraudulent activity that happens when people are trying to get their tax ID or state tax ID?
Um, I have seen something like that, and it actually most happens when a business is closed or they dissolve the business and that tax ID number is no longer valid. There's been fraud and identity where the fraudsters, of course, capture that tax ID number and they use it for their own purposes to gain any type of tax incentives, some sort of refunds or tax benefits to go ahead and benefit from that. So I
Mhm.
have seen it. Um, I mean, unfortunately, things do happen like that, even at the business level. So unfortunately, there's no way to escape that other than just obviously being careful
Mhm.
and making sure that everything is secure. But yes, unfortunately, it does happen even at the business level.
Okay, okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. That way we are able to protect ourselves when it comes to that. Now, for a business that just started, a brand new business, do you or the question is actually, when should a business consider getting the federal and state tax ID? Should it get it right when they start the business, before they start the business, 6 months into it, a year after? When is the recommended time to get it? You would say.
And quite honestly, I mean, there's really no time frame, and
Mhm.
there's really it actually depends on the growth of the business. To be honest
Mhm.
with you, it's actually one of those things where some people either do it immediately. Now, once again, it also depends on the type of business that you're having. So, once again, the sole proprietorship, which is just a small business owned by one person, obviously have more time and they are able and less documentation that are required that obviously you would be able to do something like that much faster. Unlike something a little bit more bigger, like a corporation, then of course there's more documents that are involved, and so for you to get some sort of a tax ID number might take a little bit longer. So it depends on the type of business.
Okay. Okay. And if there's a business that's watching right now, and let's just say, they receive everything cash, that maybe they don't even have a business bank account, and they're like, I don't want to get a federal and state tax ID. It probably seems like too much work, too much paperwork, and whatever. What do you think are the benefits to, I guess, formalizing the business when they set up their federal and state tax ID? What would you say are some benefits to that?
Actually, there's quite a bit of benefits. If you do not get a federal tax ID number, which obviously all businesses need one, then you, in reality, to a certain extent, don't exist. Obviously, you do exist on paper, but if you do need to grow the business, obviously you would need to open a bank account. So that's where this comes into play. Of course, the goal for all businesses is actually for them to grow and be successful. So at one point, the business will need to perhaps get some sort of a loan, a line of credit. So a tax ID number obviously is required to open a bank account. So once again, for a business owner and for you to grow the business and be successful, you do need a tax ID number. Unlike if you don't have one, then once again, running a business by cash, then that's also a very unsafe thing to do, because
Mhm,
then obviously you don't have a place to put your
mhm,
money at, right? So
mhm,
it's one of those where it is a requirement, and of course you want to do things everything by the law and make sure
mhm.
that we all pay
Yeah.
you know
Our fair share. Yeah, yeah,
our fair
definitely.
share of taxes. Correct.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I would definitely add to that and say, yeah, it's the best way. You want to, I mean, if you just started, maybe you're like, I don't want to do it yet, but especially if you already have people working for you, you have this a lot of money coming in, cash. I mean, it's the safe route is putting all that money in the bank account, which leads to my next question. In order to open a business bank account, do you need both the federal and state tax ID or just a federal ID?
For the bank level, we only need the federal tax ID number. That's once again, that's the business entity. That is who we actually have a record for. At the state level, that's more for filing your taxes and see what you really need to do with that. But for the bank, you only require the federal tax ID number. Yes.
Okay. And my last question, if someone's wondering if, everything that all the money that's coming in from their business, they put it into their personal bank account. What would you say is the importance of separating personal to business bank account, especially as you're growing the business? What is the importance of like being able to separate personal from business?
Yes, actually, that is a very good question, because we've had that situation here quite a bit, to where, just to give you a small example, we have some customers that have rentals, and it's a commercial building. And yes, there's really no, it's for the benefit for the actual individual, but at the same time, it's considered to be some sort of a business account. So commingling personal with business money, it just becomes an issue. You really, for bookkeeping purposes, of course, there's really no great bookkeeping record on your expenses and your revenues. So keeping it separate is always recommended, just in case, once again, if your business starts getting bigger and bigger, and for tax purposes, of course, you need to make sure that everything is pretty much aligned from your personal to your business, of course.
Okay, so it's good to have that separation and not commingle your business from your personal. Okay,
Oh,
it's good to know for any business owners watching, because I know they've asked us that a lot, and we see it time after time where there is no business bank account, no business credit, no nothing. It's all under the personal, and it gets mixed.
it gets commingled, and then it just becomes a huge headache. And of
Hmm.
course, when you start doing something legitimately correct, you never know what could come back and haunt you. So
Hmm.
might as well start start on the right path.
And if someone, started on the wrong path, they have everything commingled. I mean, would you say it's never too late to just fix it and just start, separating it?
It's never too late, yeah, and of course that actually depends on the type of business that you're having. Just to give you a little bit, once again, and I know that I've been referencing to the sole proprietorship. That one, once again, is the simplest form and the easy business to go ahead and start. But that one is actually owned by one person. So that one typically, for example, could be like a plumber or some sort of electrician or mechanic, and it's that only one person. In some cases, depending on your state regulations, you are able to go ahead and file everything under your social because it's you. But once again, once you start getting bigger, expanding the business, then more assets, more responsibilities. Then of course, it's always best to go ahead and do it separate.
Okay, that's all very good information to know. And then I don't have any other questions on my end. I don't know if you have any final remarks, to the topic that we've been discussing about federal and state tax ID. Anything that you would leave, a business owner that's watching or someone that wants to start a business. Any final remarks, Luis, that you'd leave them?
Regarding this topic, I know it could be scary. It could be very doubtful and uncertainty. But rest assured, there's a lot of tools out there. There's websites. There's bankers that could also help. We have quite a bit of personal individuals that they start their own business and they come and seek advice from us. Once again, that's advice. We're not the professionals, but at the same way, at the same time, we do give them some guidance and some sort of a pathway for them to start. So don't be afraid. It's not, and of course, like we said, I mean, we all need to pay our fair share of taxes, and the best way to do it is to do things the proper way.
Thank you. Thank you. I 100% agree with that. And, if you're a little bit scared or doubtful, there's a lot of resources, like Luis said. And even this workshop alone, hopefully you can go back and watch, take some notes, from what Luis was sharing, especially on, the importance of getting the state and federal tax ID. And I mean, it doesn't seem like it's too hard of a process, especially if you can get it. The federal ID is free. You get it that's usually within that same day or within 24 hours. And state tax ID depends on the state, but again, it doesn't seem too hard of a process. If every other business is doing it, then you can too. So thank you again, Luis, for hopping on. Could you share briefly what your title is and what bank you're representing again, one more time, just in case someone maybe wants to contact you, wants to know more about the bank in which you're representing?
Of course. My title is AVP Branch Operations Manager. I'm housed in the city of Rosemead, California. I do work for Pacific Western Bank. Our specialty at this bank is business accounts. So once again, if anybody is in the process of doing a startup or they have a business already and they're looking for a bank to go ahead and partner up with, then we actually would be perfect for them.
Thank you again, Luis, so much for the workshop, all the information. It was really amazing. A lot of information I think our business owners are going to be able to apply for the federal and state tax ID so that they can formalize their business. And take care, everybody that's watching. Thank you again for watching. Please share with your friends and family, and we'll see you in the next workshop. Wow, what a great conversation we just had with Luis from Pacific Western Bank. He's definitely an expert, and he answered some great questions that many business owners have been asking about state and federal tax ID numbers. And I think if you're a business owner watching, you just left this presentation, empowered with all this information. So please be sure to share this with your friends and family. If you know a business owner as well, share it with them. Just like we learned in this workshop, it's very important that we formalize our business, especially if we want to grow our business. So thank you again. My name is Josh, Program Director here at Avance Latino, and we'll see you in the next workshop.